I got good news and bad news, everybody. The good news is that anti-vaccine kook RFK Jr. did not choose NFL quarterback Aaron Rodgers as his running mate in his doomed presidential campaign. The bad news is that people are still listening to what Aaron Rodgers has to say about things other than football. The worst news, what Aaron Rodgers is saying is getting dumber and also maybe more dangerous. So I last talked about Aaron Rodgers back in November of 2021 when I discovered that the American football player I had previously been told was a total genius was actually a complete walnut who believes in homeopathy, lied about being vaccinated for COVID, and thought that deworming paste would cure the COVID that he inevitably caught because he didn't bother to get vaccinated. From then on, I vowed to never again look up to someone just because they can win both Celebrity Jeopardy and the Super Bowl. Lesson learned. In the 2+ years since I last discussed him, Rodgers has not only doubled down on his weird COVID denial, and not only has he become emboldened enough to dip his toes into various other conspiracies, but we're learning more about his horrific beliefs that he's held on to for more than a decade. For instance, in September of last year, a fellow quarterback revealed that Rodgers had randomly asked him if he believed in 9/11 and encouraged him to read up on that, implying it didn't happen. And then CNN reported last month that Rodgers told a CNN reporter back in 2013 that the 20 children and 4 adults tragically murdered at Sandy Hook Elementary School were part of a governmental inside job. He just volunteered that randomly to a journalist at a Kentucky Derby after party. Another person told CNN that Rodgers told him just several years ago that Sandy Hook never happened. All those children never existed. They were all actors. Rodgers now publicly claimed that he does think, quote, the events took place, vague. So it appears that maybe he realizes how morally bankrupt that position is, or he doesn't want to join Alex Jones in paying the very real grieving parents $1 billion, whichever. So he won't cop to that one, but he did go on some shithead losers podcast and tell all 12 of his listeners that he believes in everything else. The Losers podcast is behind a paywall, but Sean Keeley of Awful Announcing took one for the team, shelling out $14.99 to listen to all 3 hours of this garbage to let the world know what Rodgers really believes. And boy, is it even dumber than you might guess. Basically, if you ask the question, which conspiracy theory does Aaron Rodgers believe in? The answer is yes. Anti-vax? Yes. Mexicans joining the U.S. Army to get citizenship, which they will then use to destroy America? Yes. Germ theory isn't real? Yes. JFK was assassinated by the CIA? Yes. Dumb shit about archaeology that I couldn't even bring myself to look into right now? Yes. Something going on in Antarctica? Sure, why not? And according to this clip from the show posted on Shitter, Aaron Rodgers believes that AIDS was created by the U.S. government in the 1980s.
The blueprint, the game plan was made in the 80s. Create a pandemic, with a virus that's going wild, right?
Now that is just a classic, vintage conspiracy theory. In fact, that particular conspiracy theory can be traced all the way back to the early 1980s when the KGB created a plan to damage the United States by promoting in the Western media the baseless idea that AIDS is the result of yet another Pentagon experiment with a new type of biological weapon. I know, it's so 2016 to blame everything on Russian disinformation, isn't it? Calm down, libtards. Russia isn't hiding under your bed. Yeah, I saw you guys in the comments on the Havana Syndrome video. I get it. Except that we have the declassified documentation proving this happened. Operation Denver was a massive effort on the part of the Soviet Union to stoke anti-Americanism around the world by planting the story that the Pentagon sent CDC researchers to Africa to find novel viruses that they could tweak and then release upon their enemies, and that the result was the creation of AIDS at Fort Dietrich. This is so well documented that we know exactly how they began by planting an anonymous letter from a scientist on a KGB-run Indian newspaper on July 17th of 1983. In the following years, they spread this disinformation around the globe, planting articles and receiving credulous coverage even in non-communist countries. By 1992, 15% of even Americans thought their own government had created AIDS. So now I want you to sit back and just imagine Vladimir Putin today in 2024, hearing the news that one of America's greatest professional athletes of all time has publicly signed on to a 40-year-old blatant anti-American Soviet propaganda. It must be similar to how I felt the other day, seeing wildflowers starting to poke up from the soil where I haphazardly threw some seeds sometime last year. Only like less wholesome, more evil. It's funny because, as I mentioned, Rodgers was a popular guest for who was going to be RFK Jr.'s VP pick. And RFK Jr. has his very own AIDS conspiracy theory that poppers and not HIV caused the disease.
Tony Fauci won a power struggle with Broder. And he said, this is an infectious disease. We've proven it. With Bob Gallo proved this is being caused by a virus. There's a lot of people that said it's not a virus. The virus is a passenger virus. And these people are dying mainly because of poppers. 100% of the people who died in the first, of the first 1,000 who had AIDS were people who were addicted to poppers, which are known to cause Kaposi sarcoma in rats. And you know, they were people who were part of a gay lifestyle where they were burning the candle at both ends, and they were taking a lot of injectable drugs and methadone, and there were poppers on sale everywhere at the gay bars. I remember growing up in that era. In the gay bars, they would be last call for poppers and last call for alcohol at 2 a.m. And all the gay bath houses sold poppers, and it became a ubiquitous. And there were a number of people in the agency who said, this is not a viral disease, but it's a disease that is environmental, and it's being caused to people who are, who are getting autoimmunity from doing these from toxics. But for Tony Fauci, it was really important to call it a virus because that made it an infectious disease. And it became, and it allowed him to take control of it.
Poppers, in case you don't know, they're drugs that are used recreationally, in part because they can act as muscle relaxants, making them a popular choice to take before anal sex. And at the start of the AIDS epidemic, there was a lot of misinformation and conspiracy mongering. In another fun callback to my Havana Syndrome video, at least one researcher was insistent that AIDS was actually a mass psychogenic illness or mass hysteria. That is a fascinating story for another time. But the most common conspiracy theory of the time is the one that RFK Jr. is still rehashing, apparently. The homophobic idea that AIDS was punishment for the evil gay lifestyle, despite the fact that scientists had already conclusively proven that HIV causes AIDS just a few years after the disease first appeared. And since one of the researchers who helped develop treatments and implement public policy for the AIDS crisis was one Anthony Fauci, well, you can guess why this other 40-year-old conspiracy theory is making a comeback. With some luck, after November, we will never hear from RFK Jr. again, but unfortunately, it appears that Aaron Rodgers can still throw football good. So we've got at least another season of idiocy coming from him. I am really curious what inane conspiracy is going to come out of his mouth next. Is it lizard people, flat earth, hollow earth, some combination thereof? I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you loved the video, please subscribe. And if you think the world could use more videos like this and you happen to have a few bucks laying around, head to patreon.com/Rebecca and join an awesome community of nerds like the people whose names you see on the screen right now. Thanks.